Welcome back, team. So the question here is, what questions do you review when you're studying for step 1 and 2, and when do you review them? Okay, the first thing is, when do you review your questions? You should do a question block for the question block, or whatever, how many questions you're going to do, 100, 200. If you're doing one of the easy questions, like if you're doing just one hammers on Amboss, then you should be doing like 80 at a time. If you're just doing the easy questions on USMLE RX, you can be doing 100 at a time. So I would blast through those. But let's just say you're doing a regular question block, 40 questions. It takes you an hour. You should review it right away, right afterwards. Why? And you should only review it in 1 hour. If it takes you an hour to do it, it should take you an hour to review it. You have to time yourself. You can't spend the whole day reviewing a question block, because then you're just not being efficient, and you're not forcing yourself to be efficient, and work expands to time. Work expands to accommodate or to fill the time we give it. I mean, that's well established. But so why review right away? Because you remember the question, you know the stem. If you review the next day, 2 days later, I mean, now you just have to go back and read the whole question, read all the answer choices again, because you don't remember it. Okay, so it should be right away, because now you remember. Oh, I didn't give Lasix because the patient was hypotensive. Oh, that was a distractor. I had to give fluids, whatever. So right away. Now, what's the whole goal of this whole thing, this whole discussion? It's that you have to be able to efficiently go over the questions you got wrong and have the confidence, have the knowledge base, and have the confidence in yourself that the questions you got right, you actually got them right because you know the pathology, you know the physiology, you answered the question correctly, you were able to identify whatever the big picture was, and for you to confidently skip over it and not waste your energy, because you have limited amount of energy. You're going to do high volume, 13,000, 14,000 questions. You just don't have the time to efficiently and with enough effort go over every single question. So you should only go over the questions you got wrong. You should skim over the questions you got right, and you have to have that confidence to skip over the questions that you got right when you've gotten that concept right multiple times, and you already know this is a slam dunk for me because now I know so much, I've studied so much, okay? So let me tell you how I developed this theory. First, I was studying for the MCAT, and I did a practice test, and I was just like, you know what? Like, I was in the zone. The next day, I just did another practice test. I didn't review anything. I just did boom. I had 3 practices back to back and without reviewing, and every time my score increased. So I was like, wait a second, maybe most of my utility is just by doing the actual practice test. It's not by all this time that I'm spending reviewing why this answer is wrong, what does this word mean, let me look it up. No, so you basically need to be there. You need to be getting reps in. I mean, it's the same thing with, with working out. If there's a muscle that's weak, a muscle group that's weak, you need to work that muscle group more than once a week or more than twice a week, or increase your volume. So this is how it works. So recall that we're talking about the principle of high volume practice. Okay, so you're gonna be someone who's doing over your year of prep for step 1, your first 2 years of med school, and then your 3rd year of med school when you're prepping for step 2. You should be doing 10,000 to 14,000 questions for step 1. The same thing for step 2, 10,000 to 14,000 questions for step 2. And I believe that you should only be doing novel questions, no repeat questions. And the novel questions provide the most utility when you're first attacking the question. What I mean by that is most of the benefit from a question comes from doing it timed in that 40 question block. That's like 80% of the utility, because then you're thinking critically. You have to use all the knowledge that you have. Any knowledge that you don't have is not there for you to use. You're timed, you're stressed, you're balancing the test. Obviously, you're trying to perform, you're trying to be in flow state, you're trying to focus. So that's the time when you're getting the best utility. Afterwards, when you're reviewing, even the wrong answers that you're reviewing, most of the learning, the scaffold, the ideas, the connections that were formed were doing that during the actual test when you were reading intently like crazy and you were laser focused, okay? Now, basically that scaffold of what the question was asking is built during the test, and then you review your wrong answers, and when you review that question, now you're padding it, you're putting the cement between the bricks to build up the scaffold even further, to pad it, to build the walls, to put the windows, whatever. Well, I know I'm jumping analogies, but so my opinion, I mean, this is a theory. It's an extreme theory. You should, for the most part, And the reason I advocate you should, for the most part, only review questions you got wrong. The reason I say you should only review the questions you got wrong, because you're not going to do that. You're not able to break the bad habit of rereading the question that you got right just so you can feel good about yourself. Yeah, I knew that. Just so you can have a false sense of security. Yeah, I know this stuff. Okay, but it's not helping you. And if I said, for the most part, you should review only the questions you got wrong, you'd probably review all the questions you got right. So I'm telling you right now, like, try to avoid reviewing any questions you got right. How do I know if I got the question right just because I guessed or because I actually know it? You'll get it wrong the next time. Between the 5,000 and 10,000 number of questions you're doing, or at question number 12,000, you'll get it wrong. The concept will repeat. If it only comes up one time, it's not important. It was not even worth reviewing at all. Okay, it's not going to come up on the test. The test. It's not a wide, broad scope exam like you think. You think that because you don't have enough basic content knowledge yet, because you haven't done enough questions. Every question, every concept, they ask about it the same way. You just think it's a different way because you don't know enough about the topic, okay? But when you actually learn the topic properly by getting questions wrong and doing questions, you're going to realize they've asked that question 300 times, okay? The same exact way. You just don't think it's the same exact way because, again, you don't know anything yet. You're still studying, okay? You're still getting questions wrong. So the purpose of this, you got to conserve energy. You just don't have time to go over 14,000 questions, but you do have time to do 14,000 questions and to go over 7,000 or 8,000 questions that you got wrong, okay? And this closes the gap. What do I mean by that is, so I get a question right and I review it. I basically had this amount of knowledge about this topic and I reviewed the question and now I still have this same amount of knowledge. Oh, okay. Like, all right, man, like, how did you benefit from that? You didn't. You just think it made you feel good. How does it close the gap now is when you're only reviewing wrong questions, it's basically like your deficit is slowly shrinking because you're reviewing the wrong questions. And then you're doing a bunch more questions instead of wasting time reviewing the questions you got right. Now you're blasting through a whole nother new novel question block and you're getting 10 questions wrong out of 40. And so now you're reviewing those 10 questions, okay? And slowly that knowledge deficit, it's slowly shrinking. And before you know it, you know so much and you've been exposed to so much. You're going to have the confidence on the day of the test and you're going to say, I've gotten every single concept that they're going to ask about. I've gotten it wrong once or twice. I've reviewed that wrong question, really put in an effort. I didn't waste time reviewing questions I got right. Anything that comes up on the test, you're going to have the confidence to say, I've been exposed to this before. And if you see something on the test that you've never been exposed to before, you can bet no one else was exposed to it either. It's probably an experimental question, etc. Okay. So what I believe, like working out and figuring out, the wrong questions eventually leads to you, like for the most part, knowing pretty much everything. Okay. The other thing is when you review like a question you got right, I mean, again, like the exam is not that wide scope. When you review a question you got right and your knowledge base on that topic increases by 1%, the reason you got it right is because you know the core concepts. And now when you read that question and all the answer choices, you've basically just picked up the low yield stuff now. That's not going to be tested, okay? They're just going to test the major topics that are always there. I mean, it's common stuff. It's bread and butter. Medicine is bread and butter. And the test too, for the most part, it's bread and butter. Santiago IQ has like a video where he talks about 20% of the content, 80% of the questions. So, if your goal is to get a really high score, then the first step is still to do a bunch of questions and review your wrongs so that you have that broad knowledge base. And then if you have extra time, it's a luxury to review the right questions, okay? The other thing is like, you're basically at the end to really know that you've developed the confidence and that you're ready for the exam is when you read a question you recognize like right away, like they're going to ask this angle, this question, this concept in this different way from this perspective. And it just becomes like this, where you're seeing the words on the text, the letters just like pop out at you and it's like click, like light bulb. Only way again is through volume. Now, how do you know that you don't know a concept? How do you know that you don't know a concept even if you're getting it right? Again, because you're going to get that question wrong whenever you do high volume practice, okay? So this is my advice. This is the thing that I've applied to step 1 experimenting, like, because I was obviously not that experienced, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna like read all the questions I got right. And then I started realizing after I've done more and more, I was like, man, I'm wasting time right now. I just need to get to the questions I got wrong so I can work on my deficits. With step 2, I really did it. And and even though I choked on step 2, I'll make a video about why I choked, because it's not really related to my prep. It was the day of the test where I choked. On step 3, I did not review any right questions. I only studied in the hospital. Was not going to waste my vacation day studying. And I got a 233 on step 3. I'll post a screenshot later and stuff like that. In my opinion, that's 30 points wasted of study time wasted, because I just wanted 202 so I could just pass. I wasn't going for a high score, and so I got that 233 with only reviewing questions I got wrong. And even then, just barely reviewing them, because I just want to get by, to pass. So that's my advice.